Heidi Edwards,
Here.
Wendy Kroger,
Here.
Felisa Blanco.
Here.
Thank you, Jessica. We have no action items resulting from executive session today. So our next agenda item is a proclamation, as it is Black History Month. So if all of my colleagues would join me, and I will get us started. Whereas THPRD is committed to eliminating the historical inequities of systemic racism and ensuring that people of color have the opportunity to play, learn, and enjoy high-quality park and recreation facilities, programs, services, and natural areas. And
whereas THPRD is dedicated to removing barriers to participation and fostering an inclusive culture. And
whereas Black communities have made and continue to make valuable contributions in the history of our nation's economic, cultural, spiritual, and political development. And
whereas the Black community has been the target of systemic institutional racism, discrimination, exclusion, and violence based on identity, which stands in contrast with our core values. And
I'm sorry, y'all. I don't have it open. I apologize profusely. Will somebody read it for me? I know how important this is. I apologize. Jessica made it for me and I messed up.
I can read it. Go ahead. Whereas Black History Month calls our attention to the need to recognize and lay the foundation toward eliminating systemic racism and racial disparities, and to build a community in which all experience a full sense of belonging and respect for human dignity. And
whereas the THPRD Board of Directors has declared addressing racial inequity as a core THPRD value. And
whereas Black History Month is a time where we are called to celebrate successes and to reflect upon ongoing challenges of Black communities, and to look to the future to ensure solidarity, work to advance equity and racial justice, and cultivate inclusiveness.
now, therefore, the Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District does hereby declare the month of February 2021 as Black History Month. And I do urge all those in the Tualatin Hills Park and Recreation District to support and promote this observance.
thank you to all of my colleagues. It's an important acknowledgement and a reminder of our commitment to our community. So thank you all. We did not receive any written testimony today. And so the next agenda item is board time. So if you will raise your hands, if you would like to share something today, please feel free. Heidi.
Thank you, Ashley. Forgive me, I'm going from notes right now, and they're a little chicken scratch, but I do want to update regarding the Nature and Trails Advisory Committee had a joint committee meeting with our other advisory committees last month in January, but we did hold our own time together following, which is always very productive. And I just would have to say, we say this often, but kudos and thank you to our volunteers that serve on the advisory committees. They stuck it out with us through our pandemic times remotely. And I just want to reflect on the opportunity that it's had for folks to participate with us, being that we're all in a virtual modality. We actually even had one of our volunteers join us from their time in India. They're there with family, and we were able to connect and still have that individual participate. So I'm really grateful for some of the things, the silver linings that the pandemic has brought as we are in our virtual meetings. Also, we did receive an update on the South Cooper Mountain Trails. It's very exciting to see the trail development that's taking place in South Cooper Mountain, and many of you were involved or obviously aware of the development that's taking place there and has been of talk and conversation for well over a decade now. So we had an update from Tim Bonin, our senior designer, about the trails there, and spoke a little bit about our goals as an advisory committee, what we hope to be able to do in the upcoming months and this next year as a committee, to potentially take a look at opportunities for a grant proposal for us to seek out, and continuing to work with the Natural Resources Functional Plan as well. So that is my update, and we will meet again in February.
Thank you, Heidi. Wendy?
Thank you. I had the opportunity to listen in on the January 26th Westside Trail Bridge meeting, which is really exciting because this is the PED bike trail that we're hoping to get across Highway 26, which would be a wonderful link between the north and south part of the districts. There's a lot of public interest in this, and it's interesting that a lot of the interest is in how we can make it pretty. I think people are tired of just making it engineered, and they want to make it pretty. There are some beautiful bridges for bikes and peds, and I think there's some real interest in this. And as a piece of that, and I notified Heidi, but I haven't had a chance to follow up with you, Heidi. I did let Eileen Kravitz know about it from Tualatin Hills Park Foundation, because I thought there might be an opportunity to get some of their board members interested maybe in some of the art. So she's interested. She also attended that meeting and said she learned a lot. So hopefully we can follow that through, which I think would be really super. So thank you for that. The other thing that I did get to do on the 27th was the, as Heidi mentioned, also the joint advisory committee meeting. And I want to thank Lori especially for your budget presentation, because I know that I've gotten a lot of questions like, how are we doing? What's happening? Are we okay? Will we be okay? And so I think that Lori's presentation was really valuable for that. So I want to thank her for that. And then I also wanted to say that the committee talked about goal setting for 2021. They're very interested in what can they do to help. And we also had updates, especially for Ashley, we had updates on dog runs and dog parks. And the intention of, as I think I mentioned before, trying to get 2 new ones online every year. We've gotten a lot of very positive feedback, and it's been fun working with the neighbors, because neighbors will come out and say, this is okay, but could we have this? And so the committee is working with staff to try to make it as good a possibility for the neighborhoods as possible. And I think it's working pretty well. One question that I did get from one of the members of the Parks and Facilities Advisory Committee, and I've shared this with Doug already, is they wanted to know if THPRD could offer up itself as a location for COVID vaccines or vaccinations. And so Doug can probably speak to this better than I, but since I am one of those people that's being very frustrated these days trying to get an appointment, and the only place is way over on the east side, I would love to have something on the west side. So I just thought it was a great question, and that's it. Thanks.
Perhaps if I could, Ashley, comment. We've been in a variety of different conference calls with Washington County, who is, of course, orchestrating the side of the vaccine rollout. As the case were, as we can see now, the state has taken more and more control. And though we have made the offer for any of our facilities to be available, at this point, the county is really just between the state and the minimal efforts in terms of actual sites out our way are, it is what it is. And we stand ready to support, and we'll see. It may well happen because we still have a ways to go.
Thank you, Doug, for that update. Thank you, Wendy, for your update and questions. Tia? Tia, we cannot hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now? Okay. Just to answer your question quickly too, Wendy, or to add some input on that, the logistics of vaccines, the hardest part is the storage, especially for some of the Pfizer ones. And so I think the logistics wise, it would be really difficult for THPRD to do that. Not that we shouldn't be available to, but that is one of the reasons why even like Kaiser doesn't have it at the clinics, because everybody's pushing their supplies to get it into one place so that the storage capacity is able to handle it all. But as far as for myself, we had programs and events met, and we had great presentations from Catherine, who's the manager at Conestoga, and from Karen Mattinson. And it's more of what plans are coming for this spring and summer for as far as what our community can expect as far as different events and programs. And it's just amazing what our staff have come up with. And I think our community are going to have lots of different opportunities as far as trying to still get out there, still meeting with each other, finding ways to connect with each other. That was a big focus for our group of trying to think of ways that we can continuously create these opportunities in smaller groups, especially so multiple events rather than one big event, but multiple events spread throughout the district to create those opportunities for people. So just kudos to Catherine for her great presentation to our group, and Karen Matson for just all the wonderful things that are coming out as far as what we can expect, which is like story walking, where you can follow a story while you're potentially walking through our nature parks or whatnot, chalk on the block, those kinds of things. Hopefully more drive-through movies and stuff this summer. So it's just really exciting things that we're going to offer.
Thank you, Tia. Felicita?
I love having a healthcare professional on our board. Yay. I actually got a similar email from a constituent, and I sent it to Doug. And one of my biggest concerns was public transit access to our facilities. But I think everyone's touched upon several of the concerns. But I just want to say thank you so much to staff who are so willing, who are so eager, who are so accommodating. And I know we're all in this together, and we're a community asset, and maybe vaccine distribution doesn't make sense, but something else might. And so I know there's just this wonderful willingness from our staff. So thank you. I'll share that I met with Diane of Clean Water Services. She's reaching out to leaders in the region, including, I think she talked to Doug too. They are on a racial equity journey. And so it was really nice to talk with her and do some brainstorming around and build a relationship with Clean Water Services. And then kind of following up on the presentation last month, I had shared some ideas with Eileen regarding the foundation, and Eileen followed up with me, and we did some more brainstorming, and maybe some of it'll work. Some of it probably won't, but I appreciate her openness and willing to keep brainstorming to kind of potentially cast a wider net around our who we go after for donations. So thanks.
Thank you, everyone, for those great updates. Let's see, I just have a couple myself. I attended the Chinese New Year celebration at Cedar Hills Park on Friday evening, the Lifting Hope event, and saw so many of our amazing staff. And it was such a cool event. It was an RSVP only event, and it was held in shifts, which I thought was so beautiful to both maximize like safety of all the participants and also maximize participation, right, by holding it in shifts. So there was many laughs as we didn't know quite what some of the lanterns were going to do, but it was really beautiful, and I feel very grateful to having got to participate in that. I want to thank staff for being nimble. I'm so excited that our county's risk level has gone down, and I saw the opening soon. So I'm really looking forward to that now that we are in a reduced risk category. And also I'm excited to start tap dance class this weekend or next weekend through the virtual programming. The last thing I wanted to update my colleagues on is budget committee. So today, thank you, Doug, Lori, and Olivia. We did budget committee orientation with our newest members, Alfredo and Elizabeth. And they're both just going to be wonderful additions to our committee. The other update, however, is that we had a member move out of district, and so they are no longer eligible to serve on the committee. And so now that we have a new opening on the budget committee, and reflecting on all of our conversation last month, I would like to open the process back up to recruit members of our community for that seat. So I would like to just kind of hear your quick thoughts on that, colleagues, to see if you're also comfortable with that. I have spoken with Doug about this as being, you know, something that will require staff time, and so I have aligned with Doug on this. Felicita?
Thank you. And yeah, I know this is more work for staff, and I appreciate that every year in everything that we do, whether it's advisory committees, budget committees, stakeholder committees, that we get better and better at this. We get more and more diverse applicants. So I think it's wise to open it up again. I think it's also wise to make sure if any of those that were on the list would like to be reconsidered, would like to maybe redo their application if that's something they would want to do. And I'm really going to push on us and hold us accountable to do some of that outreach, because it can't all be on staff. Like, this is part of our role. So I commit to doing some serious phone calling to try to make sure that more people know about this really fun opportunity to shape the district's finances.
Yeah, thank you for that, Felicita. And just I want to add a little bit more context. We are obligated to fill the position. So the goal would to have someone in place for our April meeting. We can't wait until like the next appropriate time. We do need to fill this position. So Heidi.
Thank you. So I'm guessing that, have we decided that we're not going back to our list of candidates that applied and interviewed earlier? I know we chose 2. Have we reached out to those folks to see if anybody is interested?
Yeah, so my thought was that, you know, this was a position that was not anticipated, right? It was another one. And so I like Felicita's offer that we could ask them to reapply so that they could still be included in that process. But I do want to also see, you know, for me personally, I could do more outreach efforts around it as well. So I think we can balance both of those things, and that, you know, we can always invite folks to apply.
Great. And I would also recommend we consider, and I don't know how to go about doing this, but that we have maybe a non-voting, potentially adding a seat sort of as a backup. I don't even know the term right now for the life of me, but pardon, an alternate. Yeah, that we could have, because we've gone through this before where we bring in budget committee members and somebody moves or this or that, and it would be great for us to have that alternate or that individual who could step into the role, so we're not having to do the continual recruitment. I mean, we should do the recruitment year to year, but within a given year, it seems as though we've had that as an issue recently. So just a thought.
And we certainly can research that. I'm not sure what's permissible with regard to state law, with regard to budget committee, because it's quite a formal process. So we'll get back to the board on what we find.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like the suggestion, and I also know there's rules we have to follow, but if it's, I think that would be a really great way if it's permissible. Wendy?
In a previous life, I served on the Beaverton Planning Commission, and they have an alternate position. And that's exactly what they do, is they have the position, and that person moves up when there is an opening, and then they fill in behind them. The idea is that that person has some time to become very familiar with the issues at hand. In that case, it was planning, but in this case, it's budget, and I think it's a great idea. So I know it works for a planning commission. Don't know about the budget, but it did work for Beaverton.
Thank you, Wendy. Heidi, did you want to add anything else? Okay.
No.
Perfect. Okay. Tia, if you have anything to add, please feel free. And if not, I'm comfortable with us moving forward.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay. All right, Doug. If that works for you, I think let's move forward with reopening, and we can also extend to those previous applicants if they would like to resubmit. I will ask all my colleagues to, if we can, for Felicita's guidance, right, that we should try to help recruit as well and get the word out about this opportunity. Okay. Thank you, everyone, so much. The next agenda item is the consent agenda. Wendy.
Hi, sorry, before we go to your formal vote, I just had a real quick question on item 8D. It's the approving the SDC charge 5-year capital improvement plan update. I just had a real quick question. Where are the funds that we'll be using reflected for the Shoals Ferry crossing? I just wasn't sure where to look for that, so I just wondered where it was.
Janine, if you could help us with that.
That we are going to have to do a budget transfer from the, we have an undesignated in the annual budget. So we will have to do that move to this project.
Okay, that's fine. I figured it was in something, but I just wanted to make sure it was there. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Janine. Felicita.
I move that that the board approves the consent agenda as submitted.
Thank you. Is there a second?
This is Tia. I can second.
Thank you, Tia. Jessica, will you please take a vote?
Heidi Edwards,
Yes.
Wendy Kroger,
Yes.
Felicita Monteblanco,
Yes.
Tia Pink,
Yes.
Ashley Hartmeyer-Prick.
Yes. All right, motion carries. Thank you. Our next agenda item is unfinished business, starting with the 2021 legislative update.
We've got Aisha and Kylie will help us through this.
Yes, good evening, board members. This is Aisha Panis, Director of Park and Recreation, and along with me today we have Kylie Grunow, who is our lobbyist and legislative extraordinaire that has been tracking all of the rapidly piling bills that are being filed down in Salem. So at last count, I think we had exceeded 2,000 bills. So there's a lot of bills out there, and we rely on Kylie to help us organize our thoughts and step in where we need to step in, partner with other organizations where that makes sense. And for you tonight, she has reviewed all of these bills that have come through, and she has organized them for you in what we hope is a very straightforward and easy to follow way. We have taken the approach of putting these kind of into those topic areas that are within the THPRD platform. So these are all areas that you agreed were critical areas for us to monitor. And so she's going to walk you through bills that are within those areas, and then also talk to you about some more general purpose bills that can just affect how we operate as an organization. And finally, there's some newer items that she wanted to discuss and get some guidance from you on. So I will turn this now over to Kylie, who will walk you through the bills.
Hello, everyone. Good to be here tonight. So I thought I'd do just a quick update on the session so far. We call it kind of the Disneyland effect. It's the hurry up and wait. There is a whole lot of that happening right now because everything is so virtual that while bills are being posted, it's a little bit trickier and more difficult to kind of get the paperwork and that kind of thing rolling. So there's been a lot of that. And as Aisha said, yes, there has been over 2,100 bills introduced. So keeping track of all those and monitoring those. And like she said, we have organized them by your platform. So that's how I'll walk through them. Before I move to that, I did want to note that we do have legislative visits now scheduled with our 4 new legislators. Those are going to be on the 19th. I will provide and we'll work on some talking points for that align with our platform. That's what we'll use for our meetings. So look for those before our meetings with the new legislators. And then I would also like to just say really quickly that this is not the only opportunity to give feedback, to update the bills, all of that. I know that the board has a protocol for engagement, but I'm always open and willing and able to engage and update and do those kinds of things. So now we can dive in. The first area on our platform is local agency control and authority. And these 3 are the ones that kind of fit best into that category. The first one is House Bill 3023. It has to do with two-cycle gasoline-powered leaf blowers, and the district is actually in alignment with that. Our timing is just a little bit different, and so we're kind of looking to see if it does have legs and is planning to move. Is there a way we could impact the timing of that to have it align with what the district is already doing? And I should have said, sorry, that as Aisha said, I'm going to kind of run through these and then call back to a couple key items and any questions on that, because I know that time is short. So I'm going to try to make sure I touch on all these, and then we can go through and do questions and feedback and all of that good stuff. And then Senate Bill 376 is one that we will not be opposing. It could have an impact to the district, but following the wildfire season that we just had, nobody wants to oppose a volunteer firefighter going off to do the good work that they do. Senate Bill 299, I think most of you are likely familiar with this legislation in some version of that it's been in the past. This is the Children's Service District, and this is one of those ones I'd like to come back to at the end of the meeting. I'll just do a real quick update right now. Had a hearing on the 8th. We heard from both proponents and opponents, and so I'll kind of go through what that looked like and what the bill does at the end, because I'd like to get a little bit of additional guidance on where THPRD would like to be on that bill. So next slide. So this is a fun one, system development charges. You'll remember that Janine is on a legislatively created work group that has really talked about and dived into system development charges over the fall and winter. There was not a bill introduced at the very beginning of session. There is now a bill, House Bill 3040, but it's just a placeholder. It's just calls for a study, and it's obviously meant to be amended with more content and intent. And we've been waiting to kind of see what that is, because it hasn't been clear. But the work group was just called, reconvened by Chair Lively for the 12th. And we're hoping that at that meeting, we'll have a better sense of the goal and the intent of the legislators on that for SDCs and what they want to do there. So we're not quite sure, but that could be very impactful. We're monitoring that one really closely. Janine, did you want to add anything to that?
Nothing to add.
Okay, just checking, and feel free to interrupt me on any of this, since you are also tracking a lot of this very closely. The next slide is about right to rest. So there are two bills in this category. The first one, House Bill 2367, has been introduced a couple of times, would establish our state as a right to rest state. But actually that one is unlikely to move this session, because House Bill 3115 is the Speaker's bill and priority bill. And it makes it so that when cities or counties seek to regulate sitting, lying, sleeping in public spaces and public property, it has to be objectively reasonable to time, place, and manner of that regulation. So we've been paying close attention to this, and we are still trying to figure out if or how it would affect special districts. And we also have some concerns with some contradictions within the actual language of the bill. And so we're following this really closely with our fellow districts to see how, and if it, like I said, it impacts us and kind of what it looks like. So that's kind of the plan, is to really closely monitor it and see when it gets scheduled, kind of how people line up and what the information put out on the bill is, as far as some of our questions. So that's the plan for this bill as of right now. So we can go to the next slide. And if I'm talking too fast, somebody yell at me. I'll try to slow down. The next one is about state funding for parks and recreation. We're currently tracking 7 bills on this, and we're either supporting or monitoring. Most of these we'd support because we want to see additional funding. Some of them we're just monitoring because it doesn't seem like the funding source is all that likely within the current context. And so we work really closely with ORPA, Oregon Recs and Park Association, one of the associations we belong to. They've put in, I think, about 3 letters of support so far for 3 of the 7 bills. One of them was most recently the agency budget for state parks, and always want to be supportive of our partners there. So that was put in on this issue. And this is one that if something comes up where we have a more specific need or have feedback on, we will definitely flag that for you. So next bill, or next slide. COVID-19 relief funding. So there hasn't been anything about actual funding and this kind of relief funding at the state level. There's obviously been a handful of bills that have to do with workers' comp, liabilities issues, data transfers, and that kind of thing with OHA. But this is really active at the federal level right now. As we get more clarity about what's coming down from the feds, we may start to see actual state level legislation. We will obviously add that to our tracker and let you know when that happens. Next slide. So this is the category that Aisha was talking about, kind of that we had to add other, because these are bills that obviously impact the district in one way or another, but aren't necessarily part of our platform. And they have like workforce, HR, public contracting, those kinds of things. That's about 26 different bills that we're tracking right now. I'll call out two. There are two bills that have to do with requirements for employers when air quality is at a bad level that people shouldn't be out in. The district already has a policy for one of the bills. It looks as though we probably are in alignment. The other bill is a little bit more stringent. We need to see what kind of impact it would have on the district if it were to get scheduled. So that's the kind of bills we're monitoring there. I also have a couple other examples, whether or not you can require a driver's license for employment, whether or not you can ban the use of marijuana as part of your employment. So tracking those, and also know that most of these kinds of bills impact a whole host of entities and are tracked in lots of different forums. And so I paid attention to these in multiple different coalitions and meetings that I'm at to kind of pay attention to what might impact THPRD in a unique way that we would need to weigh in on. And I also should note there that it says THPRD has been working with ORPA. We also work with SDAO, the Special Districts Association, really closely on a lot of these as well. Next slide. And then the other one here is these, looking at childcare was not part of, we didn't kind of fallen into any of our platform priorities, but they were brought forth for consideration. So I was really looking to the board to give me a little bit of a heads up or direction on how to handle these bills and what we'd like to do with them. The first one has been scheduled for a hearing. 2503 has been scheduled on the 15th. 239 has not been scheduled. 716 was another one that popped up, but this one has garnered some business and industry concerns because there was in a recent session paid family medical leave, and they are wanting to see that implemented before adding kind of another component that may or may not be in alignment. So know that there's more contention around that last one, not so much the first two. So I'd love to pause and get your guidance on bills related to childcare, and then we can move into Children's Service District as a kind of our wrap-up conversation.
Thank you. Felicita.
Thank you so much. This is so fun and overwhelming all at the same time.
Sorry. I know it's a lot of time that I'm talking about.
Living too. So, I mean, long legislative sessions, overwhelming, but it's exciting. There's so much happening, and there's so many new voices in there that are shaping it, and so many folks who share similar values to the district. I wanted to highlight some of the childcare stuff. So both Ashley, Tia, and I all attended the Oregon Child Care Project's presentation probably a month ago. It could have been longer than that. I don't remember. So I had brought these bills to Doug's attention for a couple of reasons. One, we as an organization provide childcare. Two, we as an organization provide space for childcare providers to do their work. Three, if it impacts our patrons significantly, which childcare does and is, I think it should matter to us. COVID has really highlighted that all work is made possible because of childcare. And four, I think about our staff and the barriers our staff has faced, having limited childcare options during this pandemic. And, the pandemic has really highlighted a systemic problem that has existed for quite some time. And then I also want to highlight that these are ballot measures that have been shaped and guided by BIPOC-led organizations, including Imagine Black, Apano, Unite Oregon, who we work with. And I don't see that in other bills that we're talking about. So when I think about our values, when I think about who we want to listen to, who we want to help guide us in our engagement in legislative priorities, this one just stands out big time. I know it doesn't relate to parks, but it certainly relates a bit to recreation and our staff, our patrons, and the services that we provide. So to me, this is a no-brainer, and I'd love to see us submit written testimony or even give written testimony of that if we have capacity for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Heidi?
Just piggybacking on Felicita, I would agree with these being a priority, even though we may have not stated it in some of our prior work sessions. It is critical to the work that we do and to our community. And I would place emphasis and priority on this work as it relates to child care over the work of 299. So I know we're going to talk about Senate Bill 299, but I think this is really where we can have a greater impact and influence. And I can speak to 299 later if that's more appropriate, but I think we do need to be focusing in on that. And I'm happy to, join in on a letter of support or individual letter of support for any one of them.
So the next steps would be, if we wanted to submit a letter of support, we have until the 15th to do so. So the next step would be for me to work with whomever, whether it's one or more of the board members or staff, to kind of come together our goals for that written testimony and put together a draft for you to review.
Wonderful.
I think that's excellent. If we can do that by the 15th, absolutely. And thanks. I'm happy to participate in that if that would be helpful as well.
Great. And I will say that I had hoped to touch base with Courtney Helstein from Family Forward, just to kind of, I know the one pager, I know the bill and all of that, but just to check in kind of how the conversation's shaping up to report back to you. And I apologize that that connection did not happen in time for this, but I will, as soon as I do, I will make sure to share that with you as we move forward on this piece.
Great.
Thank you, Heidi. Tia or Wendy, do either of you have questions, comments?
This is Tia. I just echo the same thing about the childcare regarding further comments that Heidi and Felicita made. My only other question is not super important, but the leaf blower one, I think we're circling back, but you said it wasn't aligning with our goals. Is that just timeline,
So,
or the timeline
so
wasn't aligning?
Yeah, so the issue with that bill is that we're actually already, from my understanding as a district, phasing out the use of those and not buying new ones, but replacing them with, whatever the replacement is that's the more climate friendly. But the bill would go into effect within 90 days of session being over, so sometime around September, which would be prime leaf blowing time. And I think the district's plan is to phase those out by 2024 to give us time. I believe that's the case. So I wanted to talk with the bill sponsor if we find out it's going to move, to see if there might be a way we could adjust the deadline for the bill to align with our timeline as a district.
Gotcha.
So that
Perfect.
we're already in alignment, we have the same intent as the bill.
Right. Sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Felicita?
I guess I'm just wondering, with that leaf blower bill, is that Representative Helms' bill?
No, I believe that one is Smith Warner's. Representative Smith Warner's is the.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just going to say, Rep. Helm lives in the district, so.
I try to close track of that, and actually,
you're wonderful. Yes.
No, I was just going to say on 2503, I meant to mention too that the three named sponsors on that bill are also THPRD legislators. So it is a nice one to be able to support some of our legislators and what they're doing. And also, when we do turn to 299, it gives us an opportunity to support the needs for childcare in the conversation we're going to have around 299.
Oh, Wendy, go ahead.
In terms of the child care, the three bills, I'm very happy to sign on with my fellow board members on any part of this. I know from the Home Builders Association annual meeting presentation that I saw in in January, one of the big issues that they said they were finding was because of childcare limitations, they were losing most of the women in their various programs in construction. So I would imagine that's the case in almost every occupation. So in addition to obviously having good childcare available for our kiddos, we got to help their moms too. So, and sometimes their dads. But I just, yeah, I'd be happy to sign on something like this.
Okay.
Thank you, Kylie. Yeah, I just echo Felicita's statements that 2503 and 239, I believe they're the same, right? It's just one's in the House, one's in the Senate.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. I think that when based on the presentations that we've seen, these ones are being like led with a true like BIPOC voice, right? Like that, I just feel like their outreach has been really important and listening to the needs of our community. So those are the two that I would also be comfortable supporting in whatever way we can. And it's, the 15th as in like Monday, like 5 days from now, 15th.
Yeah.
So I think if Doug, if you need to coach us on this, right? If we need to do this as individuals, or I don't know if since we're all together, if we could do it as a group. I don't know what the process would be.
Yeah, what we'll do is we will coerce Kylie for a draft. And, you know, again, probably the draft, this initial would be more generic because, of course, these things evolve over time. And all I would ask is we not dig too deep into this letter. Otherwise, we will miss our timeline because it's going to move fast. And it's much better to have an initial letter of good support. And then we react further if there's pushback from other entities. You know, that's when we can get more detailed and more exact in our comment.
Okay. Yeah.
I agree completely. We'll shoot for, like, this should be about a page long. You only go kind of deeper into that when you have more specific issues or specific things to call out, but this kind of letter of support, we should shoot for about a page.
Okay, wonderful. Do you want us to talk more specifically about 299?
So yeah, we should turn to that. And just on that letter, I will put it together a draft. And then if there are bullet points or those kinds of things, we'll just incorporate those in and we should be able to meet the timeline just fine.
Okay, and Doug, do we have to take a formal vote on that?
No. Okay. It's just a letter of support. You've already voiced your consensus, so. Okay,
great. Heidi, did you have something?
No, but if we are moving to 299, I do have some specific things, so I don't want to cut us short.
Do you want me to get the update first, or do you want to feel free to go ahead?
Well, no, I think most of us on the board have been approached about the special service, Children's Special Service District. I think Katie Riley reached out to all of us at some point in time over the past few months. And Senator Rob Wagner reached out to me and just said, you know, THPRD was mentioned in the testimony for 299 this past week. I do want to point out that, you know, one of our biggest partners, City of Beaverton, as well as the special district, the SDOA, they are in opposition to this. So I think we really need to take a clear look, like, while the intent is great, another taxation or taxing agency moving in to this work could further complicate things for us. And so I just want to bring that to the forefront. If you're not familiar with the bill, I think all of us talked with Katie Riley about this. Just want to bring that to everyone's attention because City of Beaverton and Special Service District Association is in opposition.
Right. You just did a great job. Sorry, is there,
oh, sorry.
No. You're spot on. I think Wendy has also had her hand raised, right?
I do, and I was just wondering if I know that Katie has worked very hard on this project, and she had one of the biggest issues we had was compression, which is exactly what you're talking about. So how has she or how does this bill address that? And does the bill still, the last time I talked to Katie, the inference I got was that they were going from a, instead of like a special district as we are, they were going to be more interested in becoming a funding source so that people like us could go to them for funding. So based on that, where do you see this bill coming down?
Okay. So a couple things I want to make sure to reference. Don't let me forget to go back to the that THPRD was mentioned in the testimony, because I do want to clarify a point there. But so 299 would create a children's service district as a special district, the same as we currently are. So it have the same sort of tax base and same relationship to property taxes, creating a permanent rate. So it creates a special district. It creates a mechanism for funding the same as a special district, but unlike special districts, that district doesn't then provide services. What the bill calls for is creating a competitive grant process to then provide, through RFPs, I believe, to provide grants to people who would address or who provide children's services. And it's a pretty broad definition of children's services, basically out of school time. So a lot of the proponents that testified at the hearing on Monday talked about the need for children's programming, the challenges that are facing the kids in our community, and really focused on equity and access and the lack of some kind of like of affordable childcare and that kind of thing, though the bill doesn't actually specify that. So then the opponents, the two that testified were Mark Landau, Special Districts Association of Oregon, SDAO, and then Mark Garst with the League of Oregon Cities. And cities and counties are opposed to this pretty much across the board because of the things you just mentioned: compression, competition at the tax base, kind of all those things. And very clear that they agreed with the intent, but it was the mechanism. Our property tax system is broken, they repeated multiple times, and we're just adding on to that. So to Katie's point, the way they mentioned before that it's through a competitive grant process that the resulting funds would be given out, does make it so that, for instance, like park and rec programs could be eligible, because it's very broad. They don't make any specifications other than it has to be for children's services outside of school time. So I don't know if that's what the bill does. And I think Katie was kind of trying to make the point that it is a special district, but it doesn't actually provide the services. They'll look to others to do that. So I'll say that since a lot of you know, this is the 5th time that Senator Riley has brought this bill forward, and it is expected to pass the Senate, and that's where we're at right now. Oops, Lisa, did you have a question too?
I guess more of a statement, so continue. I'll talk
okay.
after you.
Okay. So I also wanted to say that special districts has been and continues to be opposed. Cities and counties are opposed. ORPA, which is another association we belong to, has been opposed, but has found themselves in a neutral position, because while some of their members, like us, will be impacted by potential competition at the tax base level, other members, and actually I think all members, could see themselves as eligible recipients for this. And so they've moved to neutral. And in the hearing, when Senator Riley mentioned THPRD, he was in error. He actually meant that ORPA has taken a neutral position, and not THPRD and not SDAO. So he kind of had some of the acronyms confused, and ORPA reached out to clarify that with him.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So there's lots of hands on my screen. Take whoever.
I do have a question for you, Kylie.
Mm-hmm.
Would this be creating a special district across the whole state?
No. So it allows for the creation of special districts, and it would take 100% of the, or no, sorry, 100 electors or 10% in, let me look at the specific, it just allows for the creation of a special district.
Okay, so it could be many, but the goal behind this bill is to allow the one that Katie Riley has been working on to be eligible.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and it allows for, it allows for a vote by the public to determine the existence and funding. I'm not sure who was next.
Lacey
Please.
Tango.
I wholeheartedly agree with what Heidi's previous points. And I can't emphasize this enough that this is not an initiative that has been led or centered racial equity. And it is abundantly clear that this is an organization that does so. And so I think it is critical that we align our legislative priorities with that. So I have some major concerns. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just going to echo exactly what Felicita said. If you look at the testimony, you see who is behind this work. While it's good work, it all exactly to the T, not led from our BIPOC communities. And so just, I think that's another consideration we really need to play into this. Again, it's a little bit past time for any testimony or letters of opposition, but something for us to really seriously consider, because we do have some electeds that we trust and who trust us in our opinion. So.
If I could add as well, and this isn't specific to this bill, to 299, but generically said, one of the cautionary notes, there's a lot of not necessarily misinformation with regard to compression, tax compression in the state and local. The realities are the compression issue is not as large as it's made up to be. I only say this not to defend this bill or the potential of this taxation, but it's more, there will be other bills that are potential revenue sources for the Park District. And though League of Oregon Cities, cities, local or otherwise, counties may be in opposition for their reasons, the reality is it may in fact be beneficial to the Park District to support a bill. Again, not this one, because a cautionary note, urban renewal, for instance, for downtown Beaverton, which I sat on their board for only 10 years, I think, is a great program. But let's not be confused. It costs the Park District about $350,000 in lack of collection of taxes every year. There's a cost to these kind of efforts. So we have to keep our minds open from that perspective, that every bill has their pluses and minuses. And we align the best we can. And that's the counsel and advice by Kylie to help us through some of these that, may appear harmless, or at other ends, we have actually lived this one very intimately out at Washington County. And I think on 299, we're headed in the right direction. The fact of the matter is there have been more than enough opportunities for clarity and detail to address specific concerns. And to date, I don't believe we've heard them.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Doug. Tia?
I will just echo everything that's been said. I side with also Heidi and Felicita and Doug. The overall intention of it is great, and this is what I told Katie when she let me know. It's just the execution didn't bring the right people to the table that needed to discuss it, and the process just wasn't clear. And to kind of going on with this, it's actually completely different than what was presented to me only a couple months ago, which shows how quickly things are getting flipped just to try to get something approved, which if we had the right buy-in and the right building of a process for something this great that needs to do something so tremendous that the public does need, it needs to be very well thoroughly vetted and planned, and the right people at the table to make sure that it is an equitable process. The people who actually need the help, the children who need the help, the underrepresented communities who this is supposed to be helping, need to be at the table to state specifically and make sure that the dollars that our communities are going to pay and taxes are used in a very specific manner. So I don't know if you're looking for a yay support, no support, but that's kind of where I am.
So it sounds to me like we may want to take the same tact or approach that ORP is taking and be neutral to kind of watch it proceed and see if there are any developments with the BIPOC community in relationship to this bill, and see if they tighten it up or address some of the very things that we're raising, because there was so much talked about the equity and access and capacity issues. So that would be my suggestion. We know it's going to pass the Senate regardless, so to really see how it develops over the next couple of weeks. Felicita, I think you raised your hand.
I was just going to say that it doesn't really matter if they bring the BIPOC community in now, because how authentic was that? Did that community get to shape this? So that doesn't matter to me, honestly, if they do that. While like great intention, overall impact, I think it's almost as if they want to do it authentically, which I hope they would, and I would cheer them on for that, is that maybe start from scratch, maybe invite more people to the table for the next legislative session. So
that's a very fair point. I mean, this is the 5th time this has been raised, so you're right. It's been kind of baked in as a process without that kind of engagement. So that's a very fair point. Thank you.
I would also agree with that. I don't think we are neutral from our conversation. Actually, I think we are opposed to it, but I won't put words in my other board members' mouth. I just don't want it to seem like we were against it and then we turn neutral, to make it seem like we're sort of supporting it, because I feel like from our perspective, or most of our perspective, we're not in support of it at this time.
I will note that THPRD has not taken a position on the bill in previous sessions or now. So there's no worry about flipping or flopping about a position, because we have not taken one. So I will take your guidance.
Kylie, is there concern though that while Senator Riley may have fixed his error, he stated on record that we were neutral when we did not give any input at all?
So it's been reached out to him. He did the same thing last session on the actual floor of the Senate, but it wasn't THPRD. He mistakenly called out SDAO instead of ORPA. So this is kind of par for the course. And I reached out actually to some colleagues and to some other legislators saying, does this need to get corrected, or at what level of concern should I have? And I was told, this is not something that necessarily needs to be corrected on the record. So we could, if we wanted to. There won't be another public hearing, but we could ask him to correct himself at the work session. But I don't think it rises to that level of concern. And I wouldn't be surprised if he actually corrects himself when he speaks to it on the floor of the Senate. And we can actually make that request that ORPA asked that of him as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I had that kind of gut check in my stomach as well when he said that. I'm like, oh no, that is not correct.
Yeah.
Sorry. Felicita.
I was just going to say that I hope that Kylie, you can share kind of a synopsis of this when the legislative meetings are. I know one is with Senator Lieber. I don't know if we're having meetings with other senators, but we have several senators that represent the district. So while we may be neutral now, which we haven't really officially decided, there's still some pretty strong opinions about the bill on this board.
Yeah, my hope would be to develop talking points based off of this conversation that we would then use for those meetings, and they should reflect this conversation.
Great, thank you.
Welcome. I think Heidi was next, maybe? Is that right?
Yes, just to add, I do think it's important that it be corrected what our stance is on this, and because we have close ties to the two who have brought forward the Senate bill. I think it's really important for them to know where we stand if we do have a strong opinion about it. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm really thankful for this discussion here and the opportunity for us to really vet out, where do these bills come from and how long have they been in development, but also, who are they going to benefit as well as, what are the layers of complexity that we're dealing with here in relation to other House and Senate bills that are on the docket right now. So thank you.
It's a good point, Heidi, that I think Kylie can help us through, should this get picked up on the other side, that's when we could easily say, well, it looks like it might be coming to life. Then we can be very specific in our comments that under these conditions, we're interested, but under the present conditions, we're not interested.
Right. Absolutely. I think there's still a hand raised.
Yeah. Tia?
Oh, sorry, I just didn't put my hand down.
Oh. Doug, you're absolutely right. We can tailor comments and I can follow up on getting that corrected, and then also you guys, you tell me the position you want to take so we can move forward with that, and then like Doug said, we can take do some more on the House side to describe our position on the bill.
Yeah, I'm curious to my fellow board members, right? If we want to take an official stance as a neutral or as an opposed, or if we want to see if it makes it to the House side, I'd love to hear some quick feedback on that. Heidi?
I think it, if we are in agreement, I think it is an important statement for us to state that we are in opposition rather than neutral, because they are very different decisions with respect to that. And that is then as well a signal to our electeds in the House when we are meeting with them come this next week. This is really what we hold firm and believe in. Now, I'm thinking about my perspective right here. I sense and hear some of the same perspective of potentially holding this, as in opposition of.
So I should also clarify. So I can correct and have Senator Riley correct his statement that he made, just so everybody is aware. But the next opportunity to submit testimony on this will be on the House side. So that will be at least an individual letter will be a second until that happens.
Okay.
And it may or may not actually get a hearing.
Correct.
Well, and we are on the record here with some of our thoughts about this. So.
Yep, and we'll work it into our talking points too, to share that we have concerns about the genesis of this legislation and who is supposed to benefit and where they were at in the drafting of it.
Okay, so you do have what you need from us then, Kylie?
I think so, though I always reserve the right to come back and ask for additional.
Of course, absolutely, and we might too. Felicita, I see your hand.
Sorry, just a logistical question. Do we envision, and Kylie, you're going to be like, we don't know that. I'm trying to think what our next board meeting is, mid-March. The hearing could happen after that, right? So we could continue to talk about this at our March meeting.
I would imagine that the hearing on the public side will take place after mid-March because of some of the mechanics of session being virtual. They're only holding floor sessions every so often when enough bills have piled up. So this has actually only had a public hearing. It hasn't even yet been moved out of the Senate committee to be put in the lineup for floor. So I would assume that until I hate guessing because then you're totally proving wrong half the time.
I'm not gonna hold you to it. Yes, I definitely feel like there is a bit of a consensus around opposition. And I also just want to thank my peers for such a thoughtful discussion because we're all being led by our values and it's really clear. And these are tough conversations.
Kylie, I just had a question. Since we do have those legislative meetings on next Friday, is it a stronger statement to have a specific position at this point to discuss with them, or is just generally discussing our concerns enough, or would it be more of effective to kind of bring up our concerns of how concerned we are by saying that we are opposed to it as it stands right now? Like, would that be more effective if you had a grant of a whole board consensus or consensus of it?
If the board want it, yes. I mean, if we want to be in a opposed position, if that's the position we believe we're going to take at our next opportunities to submit testimony and be on the record, that's what we should share with our legislators. And it's to whatever degree the board feels they want to take. So if it's expressing concerns, we can do that. If it's saying, as it stands right now, we're opposed to this legislation.
Okay. And that opposition, even though it hasn't moved to the floor, is fine to just stay for as it stands right now. Yeah.
Because that will be talking. It's not a letter we submitted, because that opportunity is going to be at the next hearing.
Okay. And then I know Wendy has her hand up, but if we do that, does that require a vote, Doug, from all of us, or how does that work?
I don't think so. I mean, I think no one has stated opposition. So again, I think the way you stated it, Tia, is perfect in that the way it is presented presently, the Park District Board is opposed.
Okay. But let's hear from Wendy.
Yes.
Thank you. I am struggling with this because I don't want to throw away a financial possibility that we would benefit from, that would serve our clientele, our people, but I'm not sure this does it. I think it may be that I'm having some wishful thinking that it would do that. So I guess I'm not at this point opposed unalterably, but I'm very concerned. So, and if it were not opened up to the exact point of, as Felicity and Heidi both mentioned, in terms of our values, I can't see how this would help. I have not been satisfied with the answers I'm getting that, oh no, we will not be in competition. I'm not sure how they can't be in competition. It seems to me they will be. But when I talk to Katie, she says, oh no, we'll be a funding source. Well, I'd love a funding source. I'm not sure what else comes with it, so I'm a little concerned about that.
Yeah, I will note that Senator Riley did go on the record during the hearing and say that he said the same thing that Katie said about Parks and Rec being a funding source in his testimony, but that's not clear in the bill. So to your point. Tia, do you have your hand up?
No, I just always forget to put it down.
Okay. Is there anything else you need from us, Kylie?
I don't think so. I think my to-dos are to work on the talking points for those meetings next week to reflect the conversations we've just had. I think it's to draft a letter of support for 2503 as promptly as I can for your consideration and feedback. And then I'll try to update our bill tracker with the other comments that we've received. So those are my marching orders as I understand them. Did I miss anything?
That sounds right to me.
Okay.
Thank you so much for the time and for letting us have a thorough conversation on these topics. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity and always open to additional feedback and thoughts. Thank you, guys.
Wonderful. Thanks, Kylie. All right. We are, I know we aren't as strict with our open meeting agenda timeline, but we spent a good amount of time on that, and I think it was necessary. But let's move on to 2008 bond program update.
You bet. We've got Gary Keck going to provide the overview. So I guess respectfully, this doesn't put any pressure on Gary, that you can feel free to move it along.
Got it. Point taken. All right. Well, good evening. Again, this is Gary Keck. I'm the Design and Development Manager for the Park District. And with me is Bruce Barbarash, the Nature and Trails Manager. And tonight we're here to provide an update on the remaining 2008 bond measure projects. So I'll begin the presentation and then hand it over to Bruce, and we can take any questions at the end. Next slide, please. As you know, in 2008, the Park District did pass a bond measure for $100 million that included land acquisition, natural resource restoration. We have new and redevelopment of community and neighborhood parks. We had trail development and facility upgrades and expansions. And Here on this map, the solid dots represent the completed projects, while the circles represent the projects that are yet to be completed. I think what this map really shows, you can see how we spread the improvements throughout the district, which was pretty important. Next slide. So here, this chart shows the majority of the projects that the Design and Development Department has worked on over the past 12 years. And you can see that we're down to our last 3 projects. They include the Somerset West Park Phase 1 redevelopment, which we're about done with. Then the Northwest Quadrant Youth Athletic Field, now known as Unity Park, which we just opened, but we still have a little bit of work on it. And then the Southwest Quadrant Youth Athletic Field is the very last project. We spoke about it last month. It's the multi-purpose sport court at Mountain View Champions Park. And I'll go over all these just real quick. So next slide, please. Here is Somerset West Park, an existing 6-acre park located off of 185th. There in the red, just south of Westview High School. Next slide. Here is the master plan, and the phase 1 work is the work that's in the colored area. It includes ADA pathways, traditional and nature play areas, the stream daylighting, which you can see through the center of the park there, the light blue, was a big amenity that we're working on, and then site furniture furnishings as well. Next slide. And this is a rendering we've shared in the past, but it's a great rendering that shows what the play area is going to look like real soon. You can see there's 2 levels. The upper level on the left is more traditional play, and then there's a slide and some stairways and walkways down to the second level, which is more of a nature theme. And if you look in the background, you can see the daylighting of the stream, and there's some boulders there where we're inviting the kids to get down there and take a look at the creek and cross it. Next slide. So here are a couple of photos. You get the before photo before we daylighted the creek, what it used to look like on the left, and then today you can see the workers there in the orange. They're in the lower play area, building that, getting ready to pour concrete for that retaining wall. Just behind them to the right, you can see those boulders that go down into the creek and then back up on the other side, inviting kids to cross it. Next slide. Here's, we're on the south side of the property. We're looking north here. The before was this summer during some construction. And then the today photo, you can see we've got it paved and the lawn, that area is all completed. They're working their way out through the north. So we're getting real close. I expect this park to be open to the public, we hope by the end of March. Next slide. So this is what we've known for a long time as the Northwest Quadrant Youth Athletic Field. Now it's Unity Park. This is a youth athletic field. It's there in the red. It's in the Aloha area off of Alexander and 182nd, right adjacent to Living Hope Church. Next slide. Here's the master plan that was approved back in 2018. You can see it's got the multi-purpose sport field there, the circular path around the edge. We have some picnic tables. We also have an access drive off of Alexander that goes to the shared parking that we have with the church. Next slide. And here are a couple of photos. The before, we're looking north on the site. The befores are in construction. You can see all the grading going on, and then the today photo is a nice photo looking north as well with the path. This is the western side of the park. And then next slide. This is the photo on the left. We're again looking north, but we're looking kind of northwest, and you can see the field there in the middle. And the slide on the right, we're looking southeast, and that's one of the picnic tables that we've added. It's a photo from the parking lot. So this park is open to the public. Like I said, we've got a few things to figure out before we can count it as closed. So it's still open on our end. On this one, Nicole Paulson worked on this one, and she's done a great job getting us through. And then I forgot to mention Somerset West. We've had Renee take that one through permitting, and then Matt Kilmartin took it through construction. So we've got a variety of staff working on these. Next slide, please. And here's the multi-purpose sport court. We brought this to the board last month to get approval for the design build contract. It's a project that originally was in the youth athletic field category. And then in 2018, the board approved us to build the multi-purpose sport court. And it was based on staff's evaluation of the district's inventory of traditional athletic fields in this quadrant and the district's commitment to non-mainstream sports. Next slide, please. So here's the master plan of what was built. The red rectangle there in the bottom right, that is the two parcels that we purchased just at the end of design, one of them, and then another one during construction of the main park. The multi-sport court is going to go on the left-hand side of that rectangle. Next slide, please. So here we go. This is a concept plan. In 2020, we did go through a concept plan. We wanted to look at the best layout and then evaluate any potential jurisdictional requirements for adding more amenities to this park. And we wanted to establish a good cost estimate for the project. And here you can see we've got the multi-sport court. We've got parking to support it and connecting pathways to the rest of the park. And this still needs to go through public engagement. That'll help us determine what type of sports we'll stripe on that court. And the feasibility study did show that we are a little short on funding in this project. But fortunately, the district does have savings within the bond program under the administration category. And in the near future, staff will be coming back to the board to discuss this and seek approval to transfer funds from one category to this one to help cover that shortfall. Next slide, please. So the picture on the left, the example, that's Cedar Hills Park. That's what we're looking at putting in there, minus the lights. We don't plan on putting lights in on this project at this time. And the picture on the right is looking the trees in the background behind the split rail fence. That's those parcels that we purchased, but we're looking at putting that sport court back there behind the pavilion. So next slide. So with the approval of the design build approach from last month from the board, we are looking at a 2023 construction period. And before I pass it to Bruce real quickly, I did want to show the board a couple more projects. I thought this would be a good opportunity. We have two SDC projects that we're just about done with. Here's Bonnie Meadow Park is what we've known for a long time. It's now Pio Pio Park, and it's there in the red in the Aloha area. Next slide. Here's the master plan that the board approved in 2018. It's a 2.5 acre park. It includes a loop pathway system, 2 pavilions. We have traditional and nature play areas. There's a multi-purpose sport court that's basketball, futsal mix. There's a community garden and half-street improvement. And here are photos of before and after. There's the playground on the right. Next slide. Here's one more photo. It shows the pavilion and then the playground on the right again and some of the nature play items in the foreground. And this park is going to be open here, we think, in the next month or so. So here is Bethany Creek Trail, the last one I'll go over. It's an STC project. It's now Yoshihira Trail. It's the one that connects on the south end, right where Rock Creek Trail and Westside Trail intersect, excuse me, and goes up to Springville Road. It's a half-mile section of trail, and it's a 10-foot wide, 2-foot gravel community trail, 2-foot gravel shoulder, excuse me. Next slide, please. Here's the south section of that parcel. North is to the right here. You can see the trail is the light gray or white that meanders within the BPA corridor. The red dots are the BPA poles. Next slide, please. Here's the north section. The north section is pretty much on an existing gravel road that's been there for years that the farmer uses and the utility companies that we paved over. And then there's a mid-block crossing over Springville Road you can see there on the right that gets the public into the North Bethany area. Next slide. Here's a couple of photos looking south. You can see on the left, that's the old gravel road. And then on the right, we've finished the project. It's open to the public. And the last slide, I think, yes. Here we're looking north. You can see a little bit of a what we call a cow path there, where the public has gone through and wore out that before, and now today you can see they've got a nice paved path. So with that, I'll pass it to Bruce.
Thank you. I'm going to give you a brief overview of where we've been and where we're headed with natural resource projects. Next slide, please. So we have about 54 projects total. As you can see on the left, more than half of them are complete and the rest are all in motion in one phase or another. And recall, they start out in planning, they move into site preparation. Finally, we get to establishment and then we're done. On the right side, I should note, we had $11 million overall. All of the funding for acquisition is complete, but the habitat restoration work is still in progress. And although we spent a pretty good chunk of it, there is still some that is out there, about $1 million, $1.2 million, that is for the projects that are still in motion. Next slide, please. We've kind of been through two phases of projects, and you can see that by the rise and fall of spending over the different years. As we started to wind down around 2018, we started a whole new set of projects, and hence you see the big spike in spending over the last few years as we've moved through those phases. And we anticipate additional spending in the next couple of years. Next slide, please. Some of the projects have gotten a little bit bigger and better, but took longer because we brought in partners. Here at the Fano Creek Greenway, real close to Denny Road, we had a project thanks to the help from Metro, grant, from Clean Water Services on some habitat work and bond money. We were able to do a ton more with the habitat. We moved the stream to a more natural channel. We created some new structure and plantings in the floodplain, and we were able to add a new bridge and improved section of trail that stays drier and higher for our patrons. Next slide, please. We're working on a similar partnership project at Raleigh Park with Clean Water Services, a little bit smaller in scale, but same basic idea. We're daylighting stream there, improving the existing stream and enhancing some of the natural areas. And you can see a before on the left and an after, kind of an in progress on the right. Next slide. As I mentioned, acquisition is pretty much complete. These are pictures of some of the places that we've worked or acquired. Next slide. This just shows you the total allocation, and in fact, we moved a little bit of funding from restoration to acquisition in order to facilitate some of the last pieces of property that we purchased. Next slide. Past discussion about board approval was that we could move funds from the restoration pot to the acquisition pot as needed, as the board approved and desired. Next slide. This timeline here shows you where we expect to be over the next couple of years with the existing restoration projects that are in motion winding down, and then the few newer projects such as work on the Bronson Creek Greenway at Laidlaw site starting to pick up in the next couple years and move through the phases described before. And we expect acquisition to wind down. Well, it's pretty much wound down now, but if the board had a desire to do something different, I've left the timeline open to that here. Next slide, please. So, I guess that was my last one. So that's the end of my formal presentation, but I do want to ask the board if they like the direction we're moving with natural resource projects, or if they would like to see us shift anything, for example, moving funds more towards acquisition than restoration, which would allow us to wrap up bond spending sooner, but maybe not do as many or as full of projects as we have on the slate now.
Go ahead, Wendy.
I want to thank both Gary and Bruce for their presentation. I always like to hear what's been happening with the bond measure. It's been a great ride. It's been wonderful. In terms of what Gary presented, I just wanted to say thank you on the Yoshihara Trail. I think that looks wonderful. Bruce, I had a question for you, and that is if I'm recalling correctly, in the Bronson Creek area, don't we still have some holes there that are not ours?
There are a number of pieces along Bronson Creek that we do not own, yes.
So I have a feeling that even if we moved all the money from restoration into acquisition, we could not handle that. Is that correct?
I believe there's lots of land out there. The question is always how many willing landowners do we have? But if you did move some in there, there certainly are purchases that could be made.
I guess what I'm concerned about is making sure that we're flexible enough so that if we do need to if we have the opportunity to make a purchase, especially in that Bronson Creek area, because it's so beautiful and there's so many people who are lusting after it and want to do other things with it. I would like to see us remain flexible enough so that if the opportunity presents itself, we have at least a possibility of going after it. So that was my big concern in terms of not draining the restoration pot, but is there a way to keep our possibilities open for us to do that? Because that area, once it's gone, it'll be gone. And so that's just one of the things that I would be really concerned about. So other than that, sounds good to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Felicita, I saw your hand. Just gonna check.
I'm sort of all over the place with my thoughts as usual. Well, lovely presentation, and our trails are gorgeous. My goodness, like just brava. I agree with Wendy in a lot of what she was saying. I feel like I never want us not to be ready for an opportunity. And there's going to be, who's ever in our places 20, 30 years from now, they're going to be so thankful that we bought the land when we could, because it's not going to be available anymore, right? That being said, we made a commitment to voters around restoration, so I want to be mindful of that. And I know little critters benefit from that restoration work. So isn't that really super clear what I'm saying, that I want both? But thank you for the work. And I'm sure my colleagues have opinions, and I look forward to learning from them as well.
Go ahead, Tia.
I will just say that I agree with both Wendy and Felicita. I actually support acquisition, especially for, it seems like we're on track with restoration a lot. So if there's a good opportunity, I fully support getting all the land that we can, especially if it has things to do with making sure that we are friendly with our little critters and protecting their space, or finding a great tree park or something like that that we can preserve to make sure that things aren't cut down and whatnot, and create that good negative carbon protection.
Thank you.
I think it's very hard for us to give good direction because I'm hearing a lot of both.
If I can offer, Ashley, we certainly can play it on a case-by-case basis. There is the trick is, on an annual basis, there is a trigger point. Once we move, obviously on a mitigation restoration project, then we're committed. But we can describe that to the board well in packages, and/or as a new opportunity becomes available for a piece of land we didn't anticipate coming before us, we can deal with that as well.
Yeah, I hope that doesn't create more work for y'all, but I do think that probably is the best approach, just given that there seems to be interest on, for both. I know we can't have both, but I think case by case is probably going to be best.
You bet.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Gary and Bruce, for your presentations. And our last agenda item of the day is the General Manager's Report.
You bet. We've got an update from Aisha, as several of you noted, with regard to reopening, and then we'll follow that up with a a tight report, as it were, with human resources and some of the activity we've been up to with regard to paying attention to board values. Aisha.
Yes, good evening, board members. Aisha Panis, Director of Park and Recreation Services, and I'm going to update you on our thinking for the summer. So we'll just jump right into it. As you've seen over the course of the last year, we have just been constantly monitoring the state guidance. It has changed a number of times, and we're ready. Each time it comes our way, we adjust and we adapt. And so we anticipate continuing to do that. And so right now, the guidance that we're following is the statewide risk and protection framework, which has us in one of 4 categories. And so what you know is that we're currently in the extreme risk category, and we found out yesterday that we have met the eligibility to move into high risk as of this Friday. So we are hard at work developing our plans around how we can adjust our operations to provide services to the community consistent with the requirements within high risk. So this is the framework that has been set up for us. It's the best thing we have to help guide us as we do our summer planning. And so I'm going to walk you through some of how this plays into that summer planning. So on the next slide, I will caveat this with, I don't expect anyone to read this. This was not an intentional sort of, dive in. The next few slides will go into these details, but this has been the chart since I believe mid-November that has really guided us in what we can do in any given risk category. So this is a sector specific guidance chart. So across the top are the risk categories, but down the side on the left are the different areas that impact our opportunities to serve. So what you'll see there are guidance for eating and drinking establishments, for indoor recreation, outdoor recreation, sports. So we actually, because we provide a number of different activities, we have to look at many different categories to receive the information about what we can offer during a given risk designation. So in the following slides, I'm going to go through what this really looks like for us in terms of which risk category we're in. So as I mentioned, currently we're in extreme risk. So these are the standards that we've sort of been held to. There's been guidance for camps, and we've used the same guidance that we had for last summer, which was 50 people per site, and that we had to maintain our pods of 10. So that was the guidance we had last year, and until that guidance is updated, that's what we're working with. So if we were to enter summer under extreme risk, this is what we'd plan for. Also with outdoor pools, we're currently operating Raleigh, which is the beautiful pool you see on the screen. And so we are able to offer lap swim and household swim potentially, but we're offering our club affiliates the opportunity to use this space as well. Within our centers, we are limited to childcare services, so that includes both our preschool and out of school services. And then we are offering preschool within our nature center. Continuing in extreme risk, on the next slide, you'll see we have guidance also that relates to our courts, our fields, our mobile programs, and our sports. So with these, again, it's that 50-person limit on a site. We do offer our mobile programs, and we have been doing that through the Fitness in the Park program. And we also have Nature Mobile and Rec Mobile. So these are what we're able to do currently. Moving into next Friday, what will be authorized is that sites can accommodate more people. Outdoor pools go from 50 to 75. Indoor facilities still have a 50-person cap, and that's based on our organization. That's what we would be required to do. We would be able, though, to offer camps and classes, so that's a new thing for us. And then it will allow us to open up indoor pools, and there will be limitations on the number of people that we can welcome, but we will be able to have them back in. And this was what we had going from August to about mid-November. Last fall, we were able to open our pool, and so we're looking at our options to do that again. And within our nature center, we can do outdoor programs, outdoor classes, in addition to the preschool programs that are being offered. Next slide talks about additional activities within high risk. And so here it's just offering up more opportunities, more size opportunity to serve more people. And we are looking at having kind of a club, not a club, but a camp model for sports classes that would serve our youth. And so, so at the bottom of the screen, you can see that we could offer some stable pod models that we used last summer pretty effectively. The moderate risk category is the next area that we're also looking at, because that is, you know, if things were to continue. And so we've been tracking all of these standards and, or sorry, not standards, but case counts for Washington County that are what determine what risk category we go into. And so if things were to continue and we were able to get to moderate risk, we're also looking at what we might be able to do within those. So again, largely the same list of activities, but we do have higher numbers that we can serve. So that's for some of our outdoor and indoor facilities. And on the next slide, we just have a little bit more information about what we can do in those moderate risk categories. The last couple of slides are the ones that I wanted to share that are lower risk. Maybe a little wishful thinking to think that we could potentially get there by the summer, but just wanted to show you that we kind of move away from that person cap and more towards a percentage. And with some of our larger facilities, that will definitely be over the number of people that we might have been able to serve in moderate. So these are all great numbers that get us closer to what a normal looks like, but right now we're not anticipating that that's likely to be where we land. So again, here are some of the lower risk categories that we could potentially see at some point. And then the next slide, I'll just share what we are sort of planning on. So we're looking really at the high risk category and the moderate risk category. We think that those are the two likely scenarios we'll be in Washington County at the time of summer camps. And so we're taking a very similar approach to what we used last summer. We're looking at doing the sports camps and nature camps. I think preschool camps would be new for us. And then we are going to continue to offer both full and half day options. And if we're moving into that moderate risk, there's some additional things we can offer, like the cooking camps, something that might have more activities indoor. So next slide, I think we have a few more items that we can share. So outside of camps, what we're also looking at is what we can do in terms of sports classes, fitness activities, what our weight room, cardio room usage could look like. Of course, lap swim has been a consistent item in all of the categories so far. And so we're just building models around these types of activities that help us determine how we can open a center, meet all of the capacity numbers. And so so we're hoping to provide a good mix that serves both younger folks, older folks, in all of the different ways that people choose to recreate. So I think the last slide might be my last slide. And we're just putting out a timeline there that what we're hoping to do is provide information about the summer offerings April 12th. And we would have registration quite a bit earlier than we did last year, now that we have a little bit more information to plan and determine our offerings. And so we're looking at May 1st for a registration date. We're also, excuse me, going to be looking toward hiring our staff for the summer, doing the training, and then we are looking at kicking off our summer camps June 21st. So that is the update on what we're looking at for summer. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Was that Heidi?
Yeah, just for clarification, so are we not going to be mailing out the summer guide, the programming
Right.
guide again?
Right. So you may recall last spring we handed out the spring booklet, and I think we might have done this. Yeah, we did the spring booklet, and then we weren't able to deliver any of that. It was quite a crushing thing.
Right.
And so what we have chosen to do, what we did last summer, because it was sort of late to the game, mid-June, before we offered up registration and before we had all of that information available, is we really leaned into providing that information online. This year, we're doing that again in lieu of developing an activities guide, but we're also going to be looking at things like developing mini guides per site, or potentially doing direct mailing of postcards, encouraging people to look online. You know, to the extent that we're able, we can provide printed materials within our centers that are open. So we're looking at different ways to get that information out that's not strictly on the web, but we have found that that's our easiest way to reach as many people as possible, just given how quickly things have changed for us.
Yeah, and that's great. I completely agree with that decision and the cost savings in that. But some minimal efforts that we can make to have notifications as to when those will be online will be great. So thank you for your work on this. We're hoping for a better summer this year.
We all are, yes.
I'm loving the pictures of all these kiddos and their masks. It's great to see.
Aren't they cute? Yes.
Thank you, Aisha. I think it's really nice to see just all of the forward thinking and the planning. And I think you just simplified the risk categories so nicely. It's hard to really track from what we see from a state level, like, well, what's going to open and when. And so it's really nice to see like all of those levels just planned out, like we know what we're capable of. My question is, would we continue to do any of the virtual programming in addition to these in-person offerings, or what is the thinking there?
Yes, we do have plans to continue both our mobile recreation, which is that Rec Mobile, Nature Mobile, our Adaptive Mobile, our Wellness on Wheels. So we intend to do all of those things, the fitness in the park, as well as the virtual offerings. So though we may be able to welcome more people to come participate with us in person, there will still be people that elect to stay home and stay safe and participate with us through live streamed classes or through pre-recorded content. So for a while in this transition period, we want to provide as many opportunities to connect with the district as possible.
Awesome, thank you. Felicia?
Just a quick question. Apologies if I missed it. Thanks, Aisha. Super helpful and super exciting. And my goodness, y'all are so nimble. I'm just continue to be awed at your creativity and all the work that you're doing. Help me remember, for our senior center, even in moderate risk, could that open, or is it?
No, well, I will check on moderate risk, but we don't anticipate being able to welcome any of our Elsie Stir guests back until sometime after July 1. So even outside of the risk framework, just as an organization, we're not quite there yet. But I think, I can dig in and get that exact information. There's a lot of little bits and pieces to keep track of. So that's one that I haven't committed to mind. What still sticks in my head is what we knew from a previous framework, which was we wouldn't be able to open senior centers until phase 3. So things don't quite correlate to risk categories the way they did with that phase 1, 2, 3. So I don't want to speak incorrectly on that. But yeah, we're watching that. And that's why it's so important to us to maintain that virtual rec center so that we can offer classes. We've had good participation from folks that are doing that would have been at the Stir Center. So that's our attempt to meet the needs of that population right now.
Sounds great. I think it's the best that we can possibly do. So thank you for that. And we all look forward to welcoming back our Elsie Stir patrons as soon as we can. So thanks.
We certainly do, and we really love something that I think Holly will be telling you about, because we do have some limited opportunities to work with them, and so I will pass this over now so she can tell you all about that.
Okay, good evening. Before we jump in, though, I want to pick up on a couple of things, Heidi, on your question on marketing. We're kind of holding off because of the weather and snow and the February reopenings that we are so lucky to be able to do. But starting next week, you'll see us start pumping out the April 12th and the May 1st date for advertising, just to give families that date certain of here's the date to check the website, April 12th, and registration begins May 1st. So we've booked a bunch of advertising. We did save some of the money for the activities guide to do the targeted postcards. I do anticipate a district-wide postcard as well. And we will be running the multilingual Centro de Bienvenida at HMT on summer registration. So lots of things in motion for marketing. Next slide, please. So tonight I'm here to give you an update on summer events planning. And the big message is now's the time to think of summer. So as shocking as it is in January and February, we're knee deep into thinking what the summer looks like. Overall, our goal is to stay within the health and safety guidelines, be as welcoming and inclusive as possible, and make it fun in a new and innovative way. Next slide, please. I'm going to just blip right by this because Aisha did such a great job on the risk categories. That's perfect, Jessica. The one thing I do want to say is from an events perspective, it's easier to plan small and then expand. So we're taking a conservative approach, focusing on all of the health and safety guidelines, factoring in the factors on this slide from what we'll be able to do, keeping things local, having a cultural bent to a lot of our activities, and making sure they're on a neighborhood scale. Next slide, please. Typically, our summer events are rather large. As you can see, we can get several hundred people to a few thousand people at some of our kind of marquee events. And all of those had to be put aside for this year as we focus on a more neighborhood focused type summer. Next slide, please. So what are we planning? The good news is because we can't go so big, we can actually do much more smaller things. So we'll see our summer events increase in number. We're going to see lots of opportunities to live our values and partner with community-based organizations, really welcoming people in inclusive ways into our spaces, and lots of volunteer opportunities. I keep hearing about the kids that are looking for service learning hours. So lots of opportunities for people to be involved really in their own neighborhoods. Next slide, please. We are also thinking of events that don't have to be booked at a certain time. So to the point that a board member made about how Friday's event was scheduled, we're also having come and go events where you can have a story walk in a park or a trail fitness event and stop at different stations and interact in fun ways. Next slide, please. We're also looking at a lot of the types of events that were so successful in the spring for us. So the superheroes back out in the parks, scavenger hunts. We're going to be playing with the Frozen theme and have Disney characters out there. Next slide, please. And again, lots of work on our part to partner with community-based organizations and have lots of cultural opportunities to celebrate and bring lots of different voices to the table. Next slide, please. One thing I want to highlight is this month we are going to see the Greenway Talking Wall murals being painted. The event is on February 21st. This is will be an absolutely beautiful mural. The artist is Rudy Redstone Cerna, and his drawing here is called Beloved Ancestors. And I wanted to share a little bit about this mural with you. The mural as a whole is meant to honor and respect the ancestors of the Americas by sharing some elements of their diverse and yet common culture. From left to right, South American condor flies towards the center. The patterns in the background are both Inca above and Mayan below. The pyramid below is from the Guatemalan lowlands, and next to it is the Quetzal bird flying upward. Next is a Mexican symbol for corn, and the pattern behind the tree of life is Aztec. Next is a teepee, and in the middle, a buffalo skull. Up above is a Chinook basket pattern, and next to it is a Kalapuya one. Next to the skull are evergreens that become the Columbia Gorge, and a salmon with an Intuit design splashes out of the water. On the right side, the American bald eagle flies towards the center to meet the condor, and in the bottom right corner is a lone wolf howling. Those are the words of the artist who made the drawing and will be here to make the mural come to life. And I will say we are working on some grant opportunities that we're very optimistic about that we hope will expand our Talking Walls endeavors into this summer. So very much looking forward to these. Next slide, please. So another strategic thing that we have done with events is we're being really intentional about supporting our design and development and planning departments and putting together our activities for community engagement on the work that they're doing with the wonderful arm of our amazing, talented community events team. One thing I'd like to highlight is some of the work that we're going to be doing on the property at the Baker Street neighborhood and Lombard. There is some really creative community engagement that we're doing with the businesses along Allen Boulevard to really take advantage of the city of Beaverton's work along Allen Boulevard. And we imagine doing a lot of outreach with the Latina culture and people in that community. So a lot of fun stuff going on there. The Programs and Events Advisory Committee, there was a suggestion about working on a passport. This is one place where we hope to do that with the businesses in the community to really tie in people who come to the event to learn about community engagement opportunities on the park design, and then also to help that community from an economic perspective. So really excited about this. Next slide, please. Looking into the fall and winter, these are some of the things that we've got cooking. We're working on another drive-in movie, holiday photo frames, and linking our sustainability goal, working on a mulch fest, which will be super, super fun. Next slide. I think we're done. That's it. Questions? I went really fast because it's late. Yes, Felista.
Love it all. Thank you, Holly and team. That's it.
Thank you. Okay, I'm done. Thanks.
Thank you, Holly. I just have to say that mural is gorgeous and the description was so moving. So I can't wait to see it come to life. Thank you, Aisha and Holly, for all this amazing work and everyone that contributed to all of this work. It's wonderful. Doug, do you have any parting words for us?
Well, yes, I have one more tight presentation.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut it off.
No, we're perfectly fine. Carlene Lawson is with us this evening. She's our Human Resources Coordinator, and she's just going to give a tight overview of some of the activities within Human Resources.
Thank you. Good evening, board members. Thank you for taking the time this evening to hear about the work being done by Human Resources and all district hiring officials to re-examine how we attract, welcome, include, and retain employees of all identities and backgrounds, leading with race. My name is Carlene Lawson, and my gender pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm from Southern Oregon, where I grew up closely connected to my Cherokee heritage. I am one of the district's HR business partners and have been at the Park District for just over 6 years. And the next slide, I'll share more about inclusive recruiting, hiring, and retention. One of the key recommendations in the 2019 SciComm's report on the district's state of DEIA was for the district to be more inclusive in our recruitment, hiring, and retention. One of the points from this report was that 48% of our staff agreed that THPRD makes an effort to remove barriers to recruiting diverse applicants. The reverse of this staff also tells a story that 52% of our staff didn't agree or weren't aware of the efforts being made. However, we believe that this perception has changed and are continuing to raise awareness for inclusive hiring and retention practices. On the next slide, I'll share why representation matters. So we're working through the lens that people of different backgrounds, cultures, and abilities help us serve our community. Historically, there was a perception that we were privileged, that all we needed to do was post a job description and candidates would apply. And while there's some truth in this, the other truth is that we missed an opportunity to invite members of our community into our organization with different backgrounds than our own. What we've learned is that we must be intentional. Our communication team has worked hard to build and foster positive relationships with community groups, and now the HR department and hiring officials are collaborating with our communications team to promote our jobs with community partners. The HR department also continues to seek out opportunities to attract candidates through recruiting platforms like Partners in Diversity, community colleges, and other networking and social media platforms. Before I share more about what the district has done to disrupt the recruitment and selection process, I'd like to call out the staffing team, which has comprised of nearly 15 staff members throughout the pandemic from all departments. This team was created under the incident command structure and worked relentlessly to change the process while ensuring that our facilities were staffed when we were able to reopen our doors to our community. We couldn't have gone through last summer and accomplished as much as we have without this amazing group of folks. And I also want to thank all of the department managers and directors for allocating staff time to support the work this group was tasked to complete. So the disruption process, or the disruption to the recruitment process, began by creating job announcements that are more welcoming than a job description, which can ultimately be an intimidating list of essential functions and ability twos. A job announcement is not only our first opportunity to share the role with candidates, but it's also to provide candidates with a sneak peek of the district's culture and values. During the selection process, we're also de-emphasizing the structured interview, as this selection tool generally favors extroverts and members of dominant culture. Additionally, structured interviews are not always a valid way to determine a candidate's success on the job. In fact, there are a variety of selection tools to evaluate candidates' knowledge, skills, and abilities to perform the duties of the job, ranging from skills testing to leading small group activities in an area of interest. Finally, we're leveraging technology at every step in the recruitment to create a more inclusive and equitable selection process, starting with our supplemental questions to not only assess minimum qualifications, but also provide hiring managers an opportunity to identify alternative paths to entry, including lived experiences. Going beyond that, we're also utilizing demographic reporting at each step in the process to ensure that our processes are not disproportionately impacting racial and ethnic minority groups. In the last 6 months, we've seen nearly a 9% increase in hiring BIPOC candidates as compared to the previous 6 months. How, you ask? We're being intentional. We're slowing things down, and we're seizing opportunities to welcome more members of our community into our organization. Disruption is hard, and it takes time to see change, but it can happen when leading with race. And the next slide, I'll share what we're doing to retain staff. Retention begins with investing in our people. We're doing this with connection, access, and evaluation of systems. And as a side note, the district is currently working with Emily Drew from Willamette University to develop a series of workshops on the topic of employee welcome, inclusion, and retention. Our mission is built on connection, and the employee support team and EPIC continues to play a huge role in connecting staff at all levels through a variety of activities ranging from fitness bingo to virtual lunches and festive sweaters to limited edition Keep Shining EPIC coins to support employee recognition. These teams have helped the district to maintain a sense of community and belonging during a time that has been very isolating. To further support the sense of connection, the district is relaunching our new employee orientation and new employee welcome program in the coming months. Additionally, the continued support and prioritization from the board and management team to invest in technology has fostered support and enthusiasm for Munis, the district's ERP software. The software team and the finance team and those involved in testing have done an outstanding job. This support also guided the decision to purchase Learn, an integrated management system with a catalog of thousands of high quality training intended for public sector employees in English and Spanish, allowing us to expand our ability to offer more training opportunities through virtual platforms to all our staff in the fall. These are just a few important steps that SciComms recommended in assuring that all employees, including those that are part-time, feel valued and included. Finally, in the next slide, I'll share a few upcoming HR projects. This year, we're continuing to focus on what we can do to further support THPRD in serving our community. equitable economic empowerment. This was one of the many calls to action presented by the Coalition of Colors of Community in the 2018 Leading with Race Research Justice in Washington County. We're responding to this call of action by taking a deeper dive into critically evaluating racial inequities in HR policies and procedures and advance equity by creating systems that welcome and embrace our differences. We're going to continue to disrupt our recruitment and selection process, and we'll be providing hiring officials and department liaisons with trainings and workshops in the spring, ranging from how to create a welcoming job announcement to bias awareness in the recruitment and selection process. We'll also be providing hiring manager tools to support pay equity that are consistent across the district. This is currently in beta testing by our park maintenance, recreation, and sports departments. And I want to thank these departments for their participation in testing, and feedback so far has been great. We also are going to continue to update the part-time classification system and job descriptions, including minimum qualifications, to help reduce barriers. Finally, in the coming year, we will be partnering with WIC to create search advocate training, which will focus on disrupting traditional recruitment and selection and deliberately seeking to eliminate bias and injustice. This is a very complex topic, and I'd like to provide a huge kudos to Ann Gillies from Oregon State University for her work in the workshop series, and a big thank you to those who have participated in the workshop offered by Ann, and will be a key resource as we begin to create our own search advocate program. Once again, I want to thank you all for your time this evening. It's quite late, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Felicita?
Thank you, Carlene, for sticking through with us, and thank you for modeling how to share your pronouns. I'll share mine too. I use she, her pronouns. Thank you. Let's normalize this. I want to also put that point out. I want to share I had an amazing job application experience with my current role. In that when I got to the final round of interviews, they provided me the questions in advance. And while that is totally bizarre in a lot of like traditional beliefs, the reality is it made me like feel significantly less anxious. It made me feel like they wanted me to succeed. And, you know, it wasn't an improv job. They didn't need to know if I was good on my feet. They needed to know if I was thoughtful. So I'll just throw that out there as a practice that I've experienced personally that I really, really appreciate. And kudos to you and everybody else for doing this work. And I mean, you're talking about all the right things, from compensation to retention to keeping track of demographics so that we can hold ourselves accountable. So thank you, Carlene, so much. And really nice to meet you. And thank you for staying with us so late.
Nice to meet you as well. I did want to answer that. So we also provide interview questions in advance. We feel like it creates a better conversation.
That's awesome. I don't know why I'm here. Great job, Carlene.
But I'm glad that we have your support.
Heidi?
Yeah, thank you, Carlene, for being here with us tonight. And just kudos. I mean, this is what we're looking for, and this is what we need to do. So thank you to you and your team. I want to echo some of what Felicita had to say. You know, while racial equity is really important to us and the diversity of our workforce as well as our patrons, retaining the workforce is really important. So I'm really pleased to hear about the new employee orientation, the welcome, and a focus on professional development, because we want our current employees and those we bring in to really want to continue with us and to help build them and help them grow as well. I am a little curious, being a union person, if there have been conversations with how to involve the association sort of in partnership with some of this work. I know sometimes that's not thought of, HR and union association, but there may be some opportunities to sort of merge like minds in this work. And very pleased to hear about looking at the classification system especially for part-time folks, folks. I think oftentimes agencies, organizations build these classifications that go without review for periods of time, and they fall out of sync with what our true values are and what our mission is. So kudos to you and your team. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Heidi and Felicita. Thank you so much, Carlene, for coming to our meeting tonight. I also use she, her pronouns. My name is Ashley. It's nice to meet you. And this is just really wonderful. I think that every piece of tonight's meeting, we saw us living our values and all that we do. And that just makes me have so much pride. And to see that we live our values through our staff and how we recruit and how we retain, right? Even though it's a journey, right? And we're not perfect yet. We may never be perfect, right? But that we are on this intentional journey together. I feel really grateful. So thank you so much.
It is, Ashley, if I could add just
Please.
22 seconds. You know, it's really remarkable because I can tell you what you all speak into this as board members. My hope is you see that we're not just in agreement, we're moving. And you'll see that reflection in the mid-year budget meeting. You'll see it in the April budget meeting that what you have done is empowered staff and you know, as far as I'm concerned, from a leadership role, is all we do is get out of their way, because Carlene is a classic example of an individual who cares passionately. You can hear it in her voice, and she's not just skilled; she cares about what she's doing, and that's what we do. And I hope all of you are as proud as I am of the Park District. We have moved through this pandemic in a really interesting way. I think we are better in the end.
Awesome. And on that note, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for being with us this evening. We will see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Good night.